And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Falcons, more on the Michael Penix draft pick. I wanted to bring up a couple things. What he had to say, because he had a conversation with Kirk Cousins, so I wanted to talk about that, as well as what the Falcons said on their reasoning for drafting Penix at 8. I know, I think last week I said 7, I meant to say 8. But this is what Michael Penix had to say at his introductory press conference. So he said that him and Cousins had a very good conversation. This is what he said. I'm going to keep it just between me and him right now. It was definitely a good conversation. I'm super excited to work with him. He said he's the same with me. So that's what he had to say on Cousins. I thought he said something else, but yeah, this is what we got, at least in the article that I have here. But I don't know. I mean, I know it caught Kirk Cousins by surprise, and this kind of created a little bit of a. It did create an outrage. Well, Falcons fans weren't too thrilled with the pick, but you had people saying, "Oh, like why didn't they tell Kirk Cousins about this? Like why did they blindside him like this?" And then you have on the other side, well, he's getting paid $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. He shouldn't feel bad. Now, I kind of agree with that side, but also it's a little bit of both. Like maybe the Falcons should have reached out to him prior to making this pick. I guess, well, not on draft night, but maybe like before the draft, you say, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What are your thoughts on that?" Because this is kind of what the Packers did to Aaron Rodgers back when they took Jordan Love. Don't you want to be transparent with your players and say, "Hey, this is what I think we're going to do with this pick. Just wanted to let you know." Now, I think Kirk Cousins. I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to give him the cold shoulder, and Aaron Rodgers didn't give Jordan Love the cold shoulder either, because at the end of the day, it's not the players specifically. Look, it's the organization. The organization decided to make this move. It's not Michael Penix or Jordan Love that they got drafted by their respective teams. That's just what happened. So yeah, I think Kirk Cousins, although he's going to be focused on, hey, I'm the starting quarterback, so like my job is now to go out there and win games. Like now you're going to have this other. I mean, he doesn't have to embrace a mentor role. He doesn't have to take on that responsibility. But I do think that there's going to be some mentoring. I think Cousins will, bring Michael Penix along because the Falcons believe that Michael Penix Jr. is the future of this team. And listen, they're going to ride out Kirk Cousins' contract the whole way through, hopefully. And then hopefully it's a smooth transition and Penix takes over. And I understand their reasoning because they did bring it up. They said, look, this is a quarterback that we liked and this is our future. We want to be able to have our future quarterback in our hands. But it's just like where he was taken, and especially with the expectations of this team going into next year, and you want to, make moves that are going to help your team now as opposed to, your future. Because this team right now, they have a great chance to win the division. Again, I like the Buccaneers to win the division because I'm a Baker fan, but right now, I mean, I'd probably lean more towards the Falcons as the team to win the division with a healthy Kirk Cousins. And the biggest need for this team going into the draft was edge rusher. And you look at a lot of the mock drafts, everybody had them taking an edge rusher. Now, again, this is why mock drafts don't mean anything, because teams could do things that you just don't expect. And this was one of those things. The Falcons took Michael Penix with their first pick. So, now this is what General Manager Terry Fontenot had to say about the pick. He said, this wasn't us forcing something. This was just, we have a lot of belief in the player. We know he could be a future franchise player. That's why we made the decision to do that right now. And this is also what Raheem Morris had to say about Penix learning under Kirk Cousins. He's a great guy he can model his game after. He's a great guy he can model his process after. He's a great guy that he can model everything after. Kirk Cousins is absolutely phenomenal from when he came into the league to now. Penix is in a position that he can just follow and do the right things within our building, do the right things within the structure of learning the offense, and put himself in a position to go out there and try to be the best version of himself. That's all he needs to do, just be the best version of himself. And Penix said, I'm just here to do whatever I can to help this team win football games. That's the biggest thing for me. I love winning, and I'm a team guy. That's what I'm going to be in the locker room. Kirk, he's an amazing guy. I actually watched the quarterback series, something I also need to do with him. Watch the entirety of it. Quarterback series with him, and seeing that he's a man of faith just like me. He's all about his family, so I really enjoy that to kind of get a feel of what kind of guy he is. Super blessed to be able to be in a room with him and be able to work with him and learn from him and support him as he continues his career. So, yeah, I mean, again, I understand it. It's just, again, it's where you decided to take him. Because, again, Michael Penix, like early on when we were leading up to the draft, I was like, oh, he could be a guy that's taken in the second round. But then all of a sudden, he really flew up those draft boards, and he ended up getting taken number 8 overall, even before J.J. McCarthy, which was a shock. Again, the way it was portrayed in the media, you thought it was going to be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then J.J. McCarthy. That was not the case. It was the first 3 that I just said, and then it was Michael Penix, and then it was J.J. McCarthy. But yeah, so what Fontenot also said, he said Penix could potentially sit for 4 or 5 years, before he ends up taking over as the starter. Because right now, Kirk Cousins' contract is a 4-year contract. Now, I don't know how these 4 years are going to play out. He's 36 years old. He's coming off the Achilles injury. And, I mean, I think he's going to be fine. Although I say that very, I do have my concerns. But I feel like he'll be able to bounce back. But 4 or 5 years is a long time. Michael Penix is going to be 28, 29 years old. He's going to be almost 30 by the time this contract is up. And, people have their concerns over Michael Penix as well because, he has an injury history too. So you go from one quarterback that just came off of a significant injury, and then you transition into another one. Well, again, hopefully we're years removed from this, and Kirk Cousins is playing well. But then you're going to put your faith in a quarterback that has dealt with a lot of injuries, in his career. Now, again, played well last year, got his team to the national championship game against Michigan. The talent's there. So, maybe it all pans out and he goes out there and he has a good career and he doesn't get hurt, doesn't deal with any significant injuries. And I don't hope that, and I don't want that happening for anybody because, again, I've said how much I dislike injuries and pretty much everybody does not like injuries. It's just, but it's a part of the game, and like I said, Falcons are kind of taking a bit of a gamble, taking Penix, but it could pan out. There's upside to that. And if you have him not start right away, him learn from Kirk Cousins, that's only going to help his growth. So that way, you don't just throw him in there when he's clearly not ready. So, again, I do like that strategy. It's just, again, where they ended up taking him. Because, again, they had other needs. And this is a team that could be competitive right now. Now, I don't see this team going far in the playoffs. But I think at least the favorites to win the division right now, I would say. Kind of just want to run through their some of their other selections as well, and we'll go through that. So they did end up taking a defensive lineman out of Oregon. They took Brandon Dorles. Again, pronunciation, apologize. Dorles. I think that's how you pronounce it, from Oregon. So they did address the defensive line. Then they took another edge rusher, Braylon Trice, from Washington. Oh well, in the second round, because I was looking at an article on Yahoo, because he talked about his favorite pick was Dorless, but their second pick was Rook Oro, from Clemson, defensive lineman. So they did go, yeah. So they pretty much went all defense with their next 4 picks. Then they went with J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame, a linebacker. They also took a defensive lineman with their last pick, Zion Logue. And then they took another receiver and a running back. They took Jace McClellan from Alabama and Casey Washington from Illinois, wide receiver. So, yeah, I mean, they took Penix with their first pick, but then they went all defense after that, so up until the 6th round. So we'll see how impactful those picks are. So, I mean, at least like the Falcons, they addressed their needs like after they made this selection. But, yeah, again, I mean, we'll see how this all plays out. But for right now, you're hoping as a Falcons fan that Kirk Cousins goes out there and he has a really good year. And he could bring Michael Penix along at the same time. So then ultimately when the torch does end up getting passed, Michael Penix Jr. is ready. And, you know, he ends up being the Falcons' franchise quarterback once Kirk Cousins eventually, leaves. Or I mean, I guess this is going to be, it for him once this contract is up and he retires. But we'll have to see. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Falcons. How do you see their season playing out? What were your initial thoughts on the Michael Penix draft selection? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the Chargers and what they did during their draft. Talk about some of their selections. Yeah, that'll be the third part of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.